Hello, my name is Carlo, and our presentation is on T lymphocytes and cell-mediated immunity. In our group, we have Robert, Coletta, Chloe, Denise, Kevin, and myself. And here is a brief overview about everything we're going to be talking about in this presentation. What is cell-mediated immunity will be covered by me. What are T lymphocytes is going to be covered by Robert. Types of T cells and the roles will be covered by Chloe. The process of the cell-mediated immunity will be covered by Denise. The diagram examples are going to be covered by Kevin, and the clinical application will be covered by Chloe. A case example, real-life application will be by Coletta, and the Christian worldview application will be by Coletta. And a fun fact and a few questions will be by Denise. And overall, Robert's going to recap everything for us. Hi, my name is Carlo, and before we get into what T lymphocytes are and how they work, it's important to understand where they fit into the big picture of the immune system. The immune system is our body's defense network. It protects us from infections, diseases, harmful substances like bacteria, viruses, and toxins. We can think of immunity as having two main branches, one being innate and the other one being adaptive. Innate immunity is the body's first line of defense. It's something we're born with, and it provides quick but general protection. It involves things like physical barriers like your skin, chemical defenses like stomach acids, and cellular defenses such as inflammation and fever. On the other hand, adaptive immunity is much more specialized. It's developed as we are exposed to different pathogens throughout the process of our lives. It takes longer to activate, but once it does, it creates memory cells that allow the body to respond much faster the next time the pathogen is present. Um, the adaptive system mainly relies on lymphocytes, a type of white blood cells. There are two main types of white blood cells, which Robert will be going more into detail further along the presentation. But overall, that's why it's known as cell-mediated immunity. For this presentation, we're going to focus on T cells, their processes, their significance, and the real-world examples of them, and apart from that, the Christian worldview application. Again, like I mentioned before, cell-mediated immunity is a branch of the adaptive immunity. It defends against viruses, some bacteria, fungi, and malignant or abnormal cancer cells. It's important to note that cell-mediated immunity uses T cells, not B cells. B cells are the ones that create antibodies. And T cells, as previously mentioned, directly attack infected cells. T cells are activated when no, antigen presenting cells, also known as APCs, display foreign antigens on their surfaces. There are two main types of T lymphocytes which will be further discussed by Robert in the next slide. Cell-mediated immunity is very important because it allows our bodies to directly target and destroy infected or abnormal cells. And that's why it's called cell-mediated, because the defense is carried out by immune cells themselves rather than our own antibodies in our bodily fluids.
T lymphocytes, or T cells, are a type of white blood cell that plays a crucial role in adaptive immune system. Their main job is to recognize and respond to cells that are infected, abnormal, or foreign to the body. They initially form in bone marrow, then mature in the thymus gland. During maturity, they learn the difference between the body's healthy cells and the harmful invaders. Each T cell has a unique receptor on its surface cell called a T cell receptor, or TCR. This receptor is a scanner, and it's designed to detect specific antigens or parts of pathogens that other immune cells display. These cells go after infected or abnormal cells themselves and help eliminate those threats. There are two main types of T cells: the helper T cells, known as the C4 positive cells, and the cytotoxic T cells, called CD8 positive cells. Altogether, these T lymphocytes are essential to maintaining cell-mediated immunity, the part of our immune system that focuses on what's happening inside of our bodies.
So what are T cells and what do they do? First of all, when a T cell becomes activated, it can either become an effector cell or a memory cell. The T memory cells are simply just referred to as T memory cells, while the effector cells can either be a T helper cell or a cytotoxic T cell. The helper T cells are important to the humoral immunity response as they produce cytokines to send a signal to the B cells. From here, the B cells can carry on the immune response, and without the help from T helper cells, this would not be possible. Cytotoxic T cells, on the other hand, help with apoptosis of infected cells. They do this by reading the protein fragments on the MHC class I molecules, and if the fragments found in the grooves are not what is expected, the cytotoxic T cell will send a signal for cell lysis. The memory T cells are different from the two effector cells, in which they wait for a specific pathogen that has already been seen in the system to re-enter. Once this pathogen re-enters, the memory cell helps to induce a response that is more rapid and effective.
All right, let's talk about some cell-mediated immunity. So, cell-mediated immunity is kind of like your body's own special defense team. It's targeting infected or abnormal cells that other defenses in your body can't really reach. So it starts when the macrophage or the dendritic cells eat a pathogen and shows pieces of it called antigens on MHC class II molecules. That's basically like holding up your own wanted poster for the immune system. So a helper T cell is going to see that antigen, recognize the threat, and then send out cytokines, which are kind of like group text alerting the rest of your immune system. Those messages that are being sent out are going to activate the cytotoxic T cells. These are like the body's assassins that are going to hunt down those infected cells. Once those are activated, those cytotoxic T cells find any cells that are showing the same antigen on MHC1, and they are going to destroy them using the perforin and the granzymes, which are going to poke holes and trigger that cell death. So, after this entire fight, some of these T cells are going to become memory T cells, staying in the body for a long period of time. Kind of like trained veterans who remember that specific invader if it ever comes back. So, according to the National Center of Biotechnology Information, this entire process is very critical for wiping out those pathogens that are going to be hiding inside of our own cells for building long-lasting protection.
Hello everyone, my name is Kevin Ramirez, and we're going to be going over a brief explanation over helper T cells, which are also known as CD4 cells. And at the bottom right diagram, we have pictured an immature CD4 T cell, which then becomes activated after binding to an antigen, which is presented by an antigen presenting cell on its MHC class II molecule. Now, once this cell is activated, the T cell matures into a helper T cell, which is into either a Th1 or a Th2 cell, which then releases cytokines to help coordinate the immune response of our bodies. These cytokines also assist other immune cells in fighting infections more effectively throughout our bodies. Now, for this brief explanation on cytotoxic T cells, which are also known as CD8 cells, we see in the diagram picture that a phagocyte cell presents an antigen to a T helper cell. Then it activates it to release cytokines, which I didn't mention it before, but they are the yellow dots on the diagram. And they then stimulate cytotoxic T cells, which are also known as CD8 cells again. The cytotoxic T cells then recognize infected cells throughout our bodies, displaying the antigen on the MH class I molecule. They then kill these infected cells by releasing perforin, granzymes, and graciolazine, leading to the destruction of the infected cell, causing cell death.
According to a peer-reviewed article by Kerman Kaliva in 2025, memory T cells play a critical role in mitigating long-term COVID-19 symptoms. The research showed that vaccination significantly boosts T cell-mediated immunity and lowers the risk of chronic post-infection symptoms compared to natural infection alone. This study ties into our topic because it provides real-world evidence of how vaccines enhance the immune system's memory function, specifically through T memory cells. The article also compared the effects of natural infection versus vaccination. In natural infections, especially severe cases, the higher viral load leads to a stronger and longer-lasting T cell response. Meanwhile, the COVID-19 vaccine was engineered to specifically trigger a strong T cell response targeting the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. Overall, the findings reinforce how vaccination improves immune memory and protection against reinfection.
T lymphocytes activity and treatment response in pediatric inflammatory bowel disease. A recent peer-reviewed study in the International Journal of Molecular Science examined how biologic therapy, specifically anti-tumor necrosis factor treatment, affects T lymphocytes activity in children with inflammatory bowel disease. Because TNF alpha is a key inflammatory cytokine that contributes to chronic tissue damage when overproduced, blocking it can help rebalance the immune system in autoimmune conditions. Researchers evaluated 31 different T cell populations and found that children who responded to the anti-TNF therapy showed increase in activated regulatory T cells and memory T cells, both of which play crucial roles in controlling the immune responses and supporting cell-mediated immunity. In contrast, non-responders maintain elevated levels of pro-inflammatory T cells, indicating persistent immune overactivation. These findings suggest that monitoring T cell profiles may help predict treatment success and highlighting real-world clinical application of cell-mediated immunity in managing pediatric IBD. Following the example of Jesus in the Gospel, healthcare providers extend compassion and healing to those who are suffering. Anti-TNF therapy in this case supports God's design healing processes and allows children to experience restored health and renewed quality of life. By caring with humility and integrity, healthcare providers demonstrate God's love and affirm values of each person created in His image. Cell-mediated immunity itself reflects God's intelligent design within the human body. T cells are made with the ability to recognize danger, protect us from diseases, and restore balance when inflammation becomes harmful. When these cells function properly, they serve as a living reminder that God crafted our immune system with purpose and precision. By caring with humility, healthcare workers participate in God's work of healing. Their service demonstrates His love in action and affirms the immeasurable value of every person created in His image.
Okay, I'm going to give you a fun fact about your body's immune memory. So we're going to talk about chickenpox. So when you're a kid and you get chickenpox, your body's T cells and your body's B cells are actually remembering that virus for the rest of your life. So if you ever get exposed again, your immune system recognizes it instantly and then it'll shut down before the symptoms ever show up again. It's kind of like your immune system keeping a permanent mugshot on file. It never forgets the face of that virus. So that's why you almost never get chickenpox twice. And what's really cool about that is how we use that same idea through medicine. So for our CAR T cells, therapy takes a patient's own T cells and reprograms them to recognize cancer cells, and then it sends them back in to destroy the tumor. So in a way, it's like the scientists are training your T cells to become more professional bodyguards and using your own immune system as the weapon. All right, enough of the fun facts. Let's move into our listed questions. So first question, I'm going to give you some answers to them. So for number 1, our helper T cells recognize antigens on the MHC class 2 molecules and release cytokines and activate the cytotoxic T cells. Those cytotoxic T cells are then detecting infected cells and showing antigens on MHC class 1, and they destroy them with the perforin and the granzymes. So basically what's happening here is the helper T cells give the command and the cytotoxic T cells are carrying out that attack that was given to them. Let's move to question 2. So for this question, we see that the cell-mediated immunity is targeting the pathogens that are hiding inside of our cells, where our antibodies can't reach. So the cytotoxic T cells kill infected cells, displaying foreign antigens on MHC class 1, and the helper T cells activate the macrophages to kill bacteria inside of them. So without this, the viruses and intracellular bacteria can spread throughout your body without being checked, and that's not what we want. So moving to question 3, we can see that the CAR T therapy uses a patient's own T cells that are genetically modified to recognize those cancer cells. We talked about this a little bit earlier too. Once reintroduced to those cells, they act like a super cytotoxic T cells, targeting and destroying those tumors. It's a real-world example of how powerful and adaptive that the T lymphocytes are really truly working inside your own body.
So a quick little recap on what we talked about through our presentation. First, we started out with innate immunity, which is non-specific defense, which is presence since birth. We have adaptive immunity, which is specific defense, which is developed over time. Talked about cell-mediated immunity and how it targets and destroys infected and abnormal cells. We didn't have cell-mediated immunity. The body would lose its ability to destroy and detect and destroy infected cells or abnormalities. We talked about T lymphocytes and its essentials to detect and destroying cells that are infected, damaged, or foreign. forming the foundation of cell-mediated immunity. We talked about that there are certain roles in T cells, T memory cells, T helper cells, cytotoxic T cells. We talked about the steps of cell-mediated immunity. Then we saw diagrams of CD4 and CD8 and what responses they give due to cell receptors. We talked about how cell-mediated immunity of COVID vaccines created T memory cells, helped to keep defense over COVID-19. We saw how T lymphocytes activity and treatment response to pediatric IBD. And finally, we discussed the Christian worldview and how it expressed the healthcare co-workers, how we provide care to our faith and be strong stewardships of life.